Welcome to the Secure the Perimeter podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Secure the Perimeter podcast. Today's episode is Patriotism is Not Dead, as we are approaching America's 250th birthday this July 4th. We figured, hey, why not talk about some good old American patriotism? I'm joined again by CEO of Smart Digital and CenturyPod's Brent Canfield. Brent?
What's up, man?
What's
How's
up?
it going?
Nothing much, just chopping away as we do. So yeah, figured, in the theme of the 4th of July, we'd kind of talk about what it means to be an American and, having that pride for our country. I don't know about you, but I've never really been one to go crazy about 4th of July. Maybe it's just because I wasn't born here, but what's like your typical 4th of July yearly routine, yearly tradition?
Well, for me and for everybody, it's probably different. For me, 4th of July has a very meaningful purpose in my life, knowing, all the way back from when the first blood was shed, to sustain or to break us away from Great Britain and become America, to now, patriotism is still very much alive, I think.
Yeah. What's at the barbecue typically?
So
or cookout, as Jack would say.
Yeah, man, I think everybody I think it's, for me in the way I am with my own kids, I have 3 kids, and my wife and I, we make it a point to not just barbecue, but to talk about the purpose and the reason behind the barbecue.
Yeah. And
to talk about sacrifices that men and women have made throughout history, again, from the very first bloodshed, from those colonists that wanted to break away from Great Britain and become our own entity, our own country, to now, to modern day warfare and what that looks like. It's important to recognize the price that was paid for our freedom, because we don't, from the very first time blood was ever shed, we don't want to let our guard down and just go slack, because then it's all in vain. Then we've done it for nothing if we don't sustain it and we don't keep it, right?
Right. Yeah, I don't know. For me, and maybe for a lot of people, when I think of 4th of July, you think of red, white, and boom and fireworks and good food. But I think it's interesting that you really make it a point for people to recognize what kind of it really is, more than just the food and the fireworks. I think is really cool.
Well, and I've, to be honest, man, I've been blessed to be able to see the other side, the front lines. And I don't mean just the front lines in combat. I mean the front lines everywhere that we show a presence throughout the world. I see what it looks like, and I know how delicate and how intricate and how critical our security is, and how important it is to sustain that security.
Yeah.
And it takes watch 24/7.
Yeah. So looking in 2026, you kind of mentioned that patriotism is going to look like, what it looked like in 1775. Kind of elaborate on that, and what does that mean to you when it comes to what patriotism will look like this year in 2026?
I just believe that patriotism looks exactly the same. It's a different era, and I think we have different technologies and capabilities now that we have now that we've never had. And instinctively, I think if you look at the brass taxes of patriotism really is just the instinctive willingness for a man to grab a gun to protect other men and other people, women, children. And I think that instinct is still there. I think it's very much alive. I think men are still the same type of men, are just like the colonists back, in 1775, instinctively they have the same exact responsiveness. And I think that they're instinctively the same type of men. They are willing to grab a weapon when someone threatens our way of life, when someone threatens our security, when someone threatens our liberty.
Would you say that's across the board, though? Because I feel like, and maybe it's just because I see my generation more than, kind of the broader picture, but I feel like, a lot of people now, maybe it's the internet, maybe my parents are right when they said it was that phone. I feel like a lot of people are growing up softer, and, they're more sensitive to things, and maybe they're more afraid of, getting their nails and teeth dirty when it comes to, really standing up for what they think and kind of going along with the crowd. What do you think about that?
I'm not one of those. I don't like to say that it's just this generation. I just don't believe in that stuff. I just think, so here's where it's at with me. Like, and I say this to everybody. Anybody could be a U.S. Marine, but it's not for everybody. Anybody could be a Navy SEAL, but it's not for everybody. It's your willingness or unwillingness to quit and your willingness to serve, right? I'm fine with everybody before the age of 18 and even up to the point of 18 and even 19 years old being slack and just kind of being laid back and chill. That's all fine and well. Because when you suit up, when you put the boots on and you swear an oath to the country, to our country, the military will get you into shape. They'll train you and make you effective, make you an effective warfighter, make you an effective person in that skill set that you've been trained for. In the military, it's called MOS. The military gets you ready for that. So it doesn't really matter about the guys who are kind of slack and maybe people describe them as a little bit softer. They still have a willingness to serve, and I think that they still have that instinct, that to instant response to someone threatening our lifestyle and our way of life and our liberty. Someone threatens our liberty, dudes come out of the corners, they come out of the woodwork, to stand on the line. And honestly, back in the day, the point's proven even more because these guys weren't warfighters. They were farmers. They were colonists. They were pastors. They were business owners, but yet they all grabbed a rifle and they got busy.
Yeah. And how important does the aspect of community come into that when you think of patriotism? And, you say we thrive when we serve each other in our own communities. So how important does the community, your neighborhood, kind of where you grew up, play a role in that?
I think community is everything, man. I really do. And if we go back to World War II, my wife reminded me the women of that era were called Rosie the Riveter because they were women that literally rolled their sleeves up and went to work in the factories to fill a void where there was a man standing 10 minutes before that who got called up to go serve during World War II. And so those women not only were keeping the home fires burning at home, taking care of the kids and doing the things necessary to raise the kids, but they were also taking care of the farm and they were working in the factories. So they literally were just women who just rolled their sleeves up and got after it. And that should paint a picture for everybody about the instinctive willingness and the heartbeat of patriotism and what it really looks like. Because, it's going to happen again. There's going to be another world war, especially at the rate we're going. There's going to be another world war. It's going to call up everybody, just as it had in the past.
Yeah.
And so, back, when I joined the Marine Corps, I was a punk kid with long hair, didn't have a clue, and I knew I wanted to be a Marine. That's all I knew. I didn't know the first thing about Marines. I didn't know anything about 1st Marine Division. I didn't know anything about Guadalcanal or Frozen Chosen or any of the historic wars that Marines fought. But I knew I wanted to serve, and so that's really all it took to get things started. And then when I crossed that line and I stood on those yellow footprints for the very first time in Parris Island, South Carolina, it was a game changer. But it was incremental steps from that day to now. on molding me and shaping me into be a better product of society so that I could serve my country.
How do you think the community, just the word and what it means to people, the word community, how has that changed over even, post-COVID? Because I feel like, COVID did a lot of things. I mean, we were forced to not have a community. And, every time I look on social media, all I see is division amongst Americans. And, God willing, it doesn't happen. But, you mentioned a next world war and what that would look like. Would people be willing to kind of help each other out? And obviously we'll never know because, it hasn't happened. But, what are your thoughts on that?
Community is everything. Because it takes people that are not just willing to serve in the military, but just people that step up to the plate for their civic responsibilities, the civic responsibility to vote, the civic responsibility to get involved and to have a voice, the civic responsibility to be a firefighter or an EMS for the people that are in the back in the States, even during conflict or war. The civic responsibility to keep the factories moving, because when we work and we do those things, it supports everyone as a whole. It's the rising ship with the tide, right? It lifts everything. And so I think community is critical, especially in times where we're called up to go serve and to respond to tyrants and terrorists and people that threaten our way of life. And so I think, community is critical. I think community is absolutely necessary because there's so many things that are needed in those times to keep the home fires burning, to keep the factories moving, to keep product moving, and to keep, the responsibilities of serving other people, like, the local food banks and the fire and the EMS and the police and all of those things. And even people that are business owners that maybe have already served their country, that are a little bit older, they're back here, keeping things going. So I think community is critical.
Yeah, I agree. But to my point, I just wonder what that'll look like. It feels like, at least maybe it's the younger folks, that their main goal or objective is just me. How can I get my best career? How can I get the biggest house for me? How can I get, the flashy cars and all these things? So I just wonder what community will look like if, when we see an unforeseen circumstance where we do need to all kind of come together as a community and serve one another. I think it may just look like mayhem.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, and I think it's a very valid point. There are people that's never had to step on those footprints and never had to grab a rifle, right?
Yeah.
And that's not to say that that's the only thing that there is. It's not. It's definitely not. And I think that it invokes a different kind of person now. Where things look differently. And what I mean by that is being an American in 1775 looks a whole lot different than being an American in 2026.
Yep.
Because of the technology that we have now, the capabilities that we have now, the ability to see someone's facial hair via satellite from, your hometown seat that you're sitting in to a place in Mogadishu. It's insane capabilities that we have now. Real-time visibility anywhere we want to go. And while we send ships around the world constantly, daily, we keep all of that at bay.
Yeah. So tell me, how does freedom kind of come into the mix of, you mentioned civic responsibility. You mentioned that here in my notes here, freedom is the result of taking responsibility and knowing how to draw the line in the sand. So tell me how that kind of freedom and responsibility kind of play a part in all of this.
Man, I think that's that's a great explanation. Drawing the line in the sand, and I think that's something America has done well for 250 years. We've had the ability to draw the line in the sand, to be able to tell other nations no, or to keep tyrants at bay or terrorists at bay when they threaten our way of life. It's been our instant response to sustain that same freedom that everybody hates. People don't like freedom in other countries because they know that we don't hold people under our thumb. We don't restrict people. We don't conform to communism or Sharia law, in the way of, and this isn't a dig against Sharia law because everybody has their faith in their religion, but we don't dictate what people do. We give people the freedom to make their own decisions and to have their own lifestyle and their way of life. We just ask that you contribute to, paying your taxes and doing the thing, that you need to do to help everybody. But it's that instant responsiveness to be able to keep liberty, valor, and honor at the forefront of who we are as a country.
Do you think that's those things that you just mentioned is what, how do I say this, like I guess gives authority to the U.S. when we do go to these people and say, kind of draw that line in the sand? Is that, that valor, that pride in our country, is that, where you think that comes from?
You just gave me a great epiphany about that, man. And I think, you've helped me be able to create and demonstrate the picture that we're trying to paint. I know from my own experience when we went into Iraq, their willingness to pay it all was a whole lot less than ours because they got not a lot to defend, right?
Yeah.
Because they didn't go along with Saddam Hussein and his way of life. And I experienced this from firsthand. Standing in one of Saddam's palaces was nothing short of marble and gold. Everything, marble and gold. You step off the front steps of his palace into poverty. People living in straw huts. What kind of a society is that? What are you doing for your people? Like, you're showing them how luxury looks from their straw hut? So their willingness to pay it all and to pay the ultimate sacrifice was a whole lot less than ours. We got a lot more to lose. And so for that, Americans, by nature, historically, have been willing to pay up to the cost of their own life to sustain what we have because it's so beautiful, it's so wonderful, and it's an ecosystem that works for everybody because of the freedom and the liberties that we have access to. There's no ceiling. There's no limit. Like with Saddam and his regime and even communist nations, there's a ceiling and a limit, and you're kept in between the lines, and you're told how to live, and you're told what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say. Try doing that in a communist nation. Try doing that in a terrorist nation. You will have your head removed on a Friday morning because you got to stay between the. So there's so many beautiful things about our flag. The most three beautiful colors are red, white, and blue to me. It's just those colors pop, and it means so much to me to see a flag, flying. Yeah. So
I don't want to get too political here, but why do you think people, especially now, there's so much, I feel like so much disrespect towards the flag, and you see during sporting events, or they kind of disrespect the flag, and which ultimately is a disrespect to the country and the people who serve the country. Why do you think that comes about?
Well, I would say this, man. I really believe there's less of that than there are people disrespecting our flag who are standing in an office. I've seen less people disrespect our flag outside of a political office than I have inside of a political office. And this isn't this isn't a plug against any political leader, but what I see a lot of now is political leaders who just need to be fired because they're not representing the American people in a way that's honorable.
Yeah.
You know, they're fighting all the time, and they act like a bunch of kids. And I'm calling them out. You know, I literally do. I call out politicians. And not every politician is like this. They're not. There's a lot of great politicians, a lot of great political people that are in office. But a lot of what I see from political leaders are a bunch of overpaid high school kids that are just they're punks and they need removed from office. They're just not representing our American people in an honorable way. And how do I evaluate that? I always look at it this way. I look at my grandpa, who worked half of his life in a factory at GM. He retired from GM. Honorable man, always did the right thing, paid his taxes, volunteered, volunteered to act on civic responsibilities that were his, and always, he was always helping impoverished people when he didn't have a lot of money because he was raising 8 kids. I look at him, right, and I compare him to people that are standing in political office, and they don't even compare. They're not even comparable to me for the most part. So but what makes us great is we can vote those people out, and we have a voice, and we can say, you're out. You didn't do a good job. You're out. You're not, we're not going to vote you back in. You're not, you're not going to be a tyrant. You're not going to be, you're not going to be a dictator.
Where do you think those ideologies or philosophies they have come from, though? Is it because they don't have, that nation's pride that some other people have, or, is it the devil at play? What do you think that comes down to?
Yeah, it's definitely the devil at play, man. I mean, I do believe in demonic spirits, and I do believe that the devil definitely roams the earth with all of his cronies. But I just think, if we're talking about people and the act of people, I just think that it's people who have never got to experience or see the real cost of freedom and liberty. Never got to meet people of valor and honor. If you've ever read a Medal of Honor award given, most of them are posthumous, which means they're no longer alive. They gave their life for our country in the line of battle and heated battle. And I think, we're very blessed to know Medal of Honor recipients that are alive, people like Dakota Meyer, right? That was in the heat of battle and lost many men. Marcus Luttrell, if you've ever read the book Lone Survivor and read his story, those were men of honor and valor, and they're no longer here. And so when you read their Medal of Honor award, it gives you a whole new appreciation. And I just believe before you serve in any political office, you should have had to read Medal of Honor award letters written about these men and women who gave their life for our country to sustain our liberty and freedom. I think that would at least give them a sense of perspective on what that real cost looks like.
Yeah.
And when you open your mouth to start a war, you should know what the cost is going to be, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's important. But, again, going back to, what's the good news? I think the good news is we still have our freedom and we still have our liberty because we still have people that are willing to serve, whether political offices or military or civic, servants, people keeping the factories going, business owners keeping businesses, thriving. I think that's that's good news, and that's what keeps America very, very strong.
Yeah. So speaking of leaders, you just mentioned business owners. How can people like those business owners contribute to a stronger nation? Whether that's creating jobs, voting, like you mentioned our civic duties, paying our taxes, serving your communities. What does that look like to be a leader as far as business owners are concerned?
Doing what you said, creating jobs, because jobs create revenue, and revenue pays the bills and buys more equipment. But I think Number one, I would say fly the flag. Fly the flag because the flag is imperative for what our country looks like.
Agreed. I think it's great to see, especially you see a lot of here in Ashland where we're located. Maybe it's just because it's a smaller rural town, but even for Memorial Day not too long ago, the university, I don't know if you drove past it, but they had all these flags lined up down in Claremont, and right outside my apartment complex, there's we're next to the hospital, so they have all the flags lined up along the street, which is, I think it's really cool to see, people having pride in their country. It's it makes you feel a part of something that's bigger than yourself, which honestly, in the past few years you probably haven't seen as much, but I think whether I see it at our local town or on social media, I was just telling Parker, our other marketing guy, I saw this video this morning actually where these two guys who served, they are running coast to coast across America, running.
Outstanding, man.
I don't know how long it's taken them, but how long they started before, but they're ending to their finishing spot is DC, so East Coast. So they started East Coast, and they're planning to get there by the 4th, so Saturday at some point. And it started off with just 2 guys, and they've accumulated over I think they said over 1,000 people.
Oh wow!
To help them run this flag. So they're running with this flag on their shoulder. They've accumulated over 1,000 people to help them run that class. Run that flag across the country. So when I see those things, as small as it can be, just a flag outside, or seeing these guys run across America, it gives me hope for what's to come. And why do you think, I guess my question is, why do you think the next generation still has reasons to be hopeful? We, as young people, were being told oh, you're never going to get Social Security, you're never going to be able to own a home, but
for the reason that you just described. Have you ever seen an Iraqi grab an Iraqi flag and run across Iraq? No. Nope. I've never heard of it. Might be out there, but I doubt it. For that very reason right there, because the spirit of America is still alive. The spirit of Americans are alive. When we started this podcast, you said, well, I wasn't born here. It doesn't matter. You're an American. I served with every ethnicity, race, religion, and creed when I served in the Marine Corps. And those men and women are my brothers and my sisters. They're in the family. When you're in the family, it's irrevocable. That's the cool thing about America. Once you're an American, it's irrevocable. Try messing with one of my brothers, one of my sisters. You're going to get a fight. Your hands are going to be full, right? Because we love and protect our people. And Americans are Americans are Americans.
Yeah.
I don't care what ethnicity, what race, religion, or creed. Because I've had men in battle with me that are different from different countries, different ethnicities, different religions, right? We're all brothers. And that's the thing about the Marine Corps that I love is esprit de corps. We are one. And we fight like one. We don't fight separately. We're not, separated from one another because of the way we feel or our opinions. We fight together. And I think that's another thing that makes, the SEALs so great, because those dudes are elite and they fight together. They fight like one.
Yeah.
So I think, it's like, going back to what Marcus Luttrell, it's Operation Red Wings, but something Chris Kyle had said when he formed Kraft. He always had this slogan that said, despite what your mama thinks, violence does solve problems. I fully agree with that. I 100% agree with that. And I do believe in the difference between anger and righteous anger. So if you want to get biblical, we could talk about righteous anger. I do believe in righteous anger. There's also scripture that supports, the love that a man has to lay down his life for his brother. There is scripture that supports that. So it's okay to fight and kill people who threaten, the liberty and the life that invokes honor and valor, right? We want to do the right thing, and so we protect that. So when people rise up in other countries, tyrants and terrorists who try to take away and threaten our way of life, we have to respond with violence that's far above their violence. And so when people threaten that, it's instant response they get.
Yeah.
Right? So it's cool to see that, though. When you look at America, from my own experience and being years in the Marine Corps, to see the level of power that we bring and the level of support and defense that we bring to our presence anywhere we go. Anytime you look, we've got ships that literally float around the world on the East Coast and the West Coast, and they literally travel around the world doing patrols, keeping Marines within 5 to 6 hours of landing on any continent to respond to any conflict in the world. It's super cool to see that because we have such a presence, and we know, and other countries know, that we absolutely mean business. And if we say it, you could pretty much take our word to the bank.
Yeah.
Because we're going to cash the check.
Right. And, a very wise and righteous man once said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." And, I think that comes in very many different aspects, whether that's with violence or if it's just something as simple as, or as broad as just correcting with truth, going into I feel, we are called as Christians to go into the public arena and correct, flawed ideology with truth. And like you said, whether that's with violence, so be it. And, but I know we spoke a lot about, the community military combatants. How do specifically first responders embody patriotism to you?
Because those dudes run to the fight. When there's an accident, when there's a fire, when there's emergency response, they run to it. That's the difference. And I think I love first responders, EMS, fire, police, because they literally run to the fight every day.
Yeah.
The war's never over. Like in the military, you go to war, you come back. They deal with it day in and day out. It's every day because there's always crime. There's always going to be a fire. There's always going to be an accident. And I know there's probably always going to be war, but it's not constant. Their job is constant. And they are trained to run to the emergency.
Yeah.
And I think, man, it's so encouraging to see first responders and police and fire and EMS. I just love those people, man, because they have to roll up on some really horrific accidents, and those accidents typically are tragedies.
Yeah.
And they do it day in and day out. And it's beautiful to see that, man, that you have such love for people that you do that. Right?
Yeah. I really feel bad for especially the police department over the past few years, since the kind of bad rep they've gotten over the course of, many events. Because like you said, I see these videos online, and there's these guys who are pulling up to these just absolute, just terrible scenes, and it really like puts into perspective on what these guys go through every single day. And that's just kind of, seeing a dead body is just normal to them. But, for me, who's just a guy in the public area just working his job, God willing, I'll never see a dead body.
Yeah.
But, I've got a lot of respect, especially for firefighters and, EMS. Like I said, I can never work in the medical field. I start wrenching when I see throw up on the ground. Never mind a dead body.
Yeah.
But why is volunteerism important to a healthy society? Serving your neighbor, serving in your community. Does that?
That's a great question, dude.
To the overall health of a society.
I think that's a great question, man, and I love the word you used, volunteers, because it comes without debt or payment. It's people willing to serve without debt or payment. I did something for you, so now you owe me. They're going to it without debt or payment. And I'm talking about all the volunteers. United Way, Red Cross, what they do, the USO for the military, just volunteers that show up at the local food banks. They're people who serve without debt or payment. I just think that's absolutely astounding. And those are such beautiful people that are rarely really recognized. And I think they deserve more recognition.
Yeah, and it seems like the people who have the least give the most in that respect when it comes to volunteering.
It's biblical, man. Serving, being the least of these, serving people. And yeah, totally agree, man. It seems like the people with the least, give the most.
Why do you think that is? Is that a ego thing, or is...
I don't know that it's ego, man. I just think it's why the Word of God is so active and alive and so truthful and so accurate. It says it in the Bible. And it talks about, the harvest is plenty, but the workers are few. It's so true.
That's right.
There's so much to do, but there's not a lot of people to do it. And like the old adage goes, if you want something done, ask a person who's busy to get it done, because they're usually the ones that'll get it done.
Yeah.
So I think it's biblical.
What do you think our leaders today can take away from people who volunteer?
Humility. Number one, humility. Be humble. Stop running your big mouth. Stop, criticizing other people. Try to work with each other, even though we have a difference of opinion. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, which I've never been a big fan of those titles anyway. I tell everyone I'm not a Democrat or Republican. I'm a patriot. I'm here for the people. And so, but if we are, if we all carry these titles, Democrats and Republicans, we should work together to resolve matters because we're on the same team.
Right.
At the end of the day, we answer to the same P&L. We answer to the same government. We answer to the same people. We're all in this together. We're a team. And so let's figure it out as a team. Like, if you have a different way to do it, let's figure it out. If your way works, let's do it. But let's stop fighting about it, and arguing about it.
Yeah.
Drives me crazy.
I know. All I see online is just division among people, and it's my way or the highway, and I'm right and you're wrong, and it's never just people can come together and kind of agree to disagree or kind of talk it out. It's always like,
sure,
if I'm not right, that means you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think as Americans, we should come together as Americans because, like you said, no matter your race, color, creed, or
religion,
we're all Americans at the end of the day. And I think just communication among, quote, different parties or whatever title you want to slang around is ultimately what's going to kind of propel this country forward. I don't know what you think about that.
I totally agree. I think that those are going to be the things that move us, forward into the future, And it's not just serving in the military. It's not just being a civil, servant. It's starting the business, creating jobs, volunteering, helping your fellow brother out, helping your neighbor when your neighbor's down and out, you lost his job, you help feed his family, you help, take care of him while he's down, those are all things that are necessary.
Do you think the younger generations are more or less patriotic? And maybe how are they showing their patriotism differently?
I think that we're not setting a good example for them right now. Okay, I think that we need to set a better example for our younger generations. And I'm just being honest. I call it like I see it. It's not their fault. If they're less patriotic now, it's not their fault. Look at the example we've shown them. I don't claim either side, again, Democrat or Republican. I don't run my mouth about our president. I just don't do it. I didn't do it in uniform. I don't do it now. There are things that can be done better, though. But I think that it's the example in which we're demonstrating. And I'm talking about all these, public leaders, these political leaders. The younger generation has not been given a very good example lately. The last several years, not just the last 2 or 3 or 4, whatever. I think the last several years. It's we got to give them a reason to want to be more of a patriot and want to get more behind our flag. And we can't do that if we're divided. We have to do that together. Those Marines that raised the flag on Iwo Jima were different ethnicities, different religions, different creeds, but they were Marines, and they fought, and they got to the top of that hill, and they put the flag in the ground at the top of Iwo Jima after a very, very hard battle uphill the whole way. So when we can start setting a better example of how to work together and how to be united, we can invoke more patriotism, people that want to get behind the American flag and the patriotism.
Yeah, I hope you're right, but I just, I say I'm a realist, but, most people call me a pessimist. I don't see where it's going to change. I feel like, the media was made to kind of split us in two. I know, like, you don't throw around the term Democrat and Republican, but that's what they've kind of created. Oh, you watch CNN, or oh, you watch Fox, I can't talk to you. And so how are we gonna, as Americans, kind of come together and break those like stereotypes of Democrat and Republican?
I mean, if you want the real honesty, shut the switch off. Shut the media off. Shut it off. Turn the switch off. Because there's nothing productive about the media. I've seen nothing good about the media. It's always bad news. It's always infighting, and always this thing about this person and that thing about that person, and this conspiracy and this thing that they did wrong, or this affair that they had, or this relationship that we just burned with another country. It's just the media. It needs to be shut off. Shut it off. Figure out a different way to communicate to the public, but that's not the way. In fact, I think all of them, Fox News, CNN, all of them should be shut off, 100%.
Yeah.
There's nothing good about it, so why have it?
But do you think that's ever going to happen?
No, because media sells.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, no. It would take a big act of God to shut the media off, I think.
Yeah.
I really do, unfortunately.
Maybe our guy Elon can just buy him out.
Yeah, maybe. And then just dig a hole and shove him into a hole and bury the hole.
Yeah.
Chuck it all in the dumpster.
What do you think are some maybe, I don't want to say smaller, but I guess examples of patriotism that you may see every day that go unnoticed?
People flying their flags. People still having parades. People still go into the cemeteries to pay homage to the fallen and those that we lost. I think those are things that go unrecognized a lot. I don't remember the last time someone went up to a guy and said, "Hey, thanks for your flying your American flag," or "Hey, your flag's tattered, I want to replace it. I want to give you a brand new flag to keep that very much alive." I think that's something that goes unrecognized quite a bit. People that fly their flag, people that have parades, people that pay respect to the fallen, go to the cemeteries, or mow the cemeteries or clean the cemeteries. I think that's definitely something that needs to be recognized more.
Do you think those small things in time can kind of hold and carry weight in kind of moving towards a more patriotic country and community?
Absolutely. It's Robert Herjavec just said this on a podcast recently with one of my favorite podcasters, Ed Milet, but he had said in the podcast that being in business, sometimes you're only moving a half an inch or an inch at a time. And it's the same as being an American. Sometimes you're only moving, the bar half an inch or an inch at a time, but you're moving it forward. And it's incremental over time. It's, it travels far over time.
Agreed. Well, those are all of the, I guess, prompted questions that I've got. Maybe just a couple more questions. Favorite thing at the 4th of July barbecue? and we're gonna call it a barbecue.
We're gonna call it a barbecue.
We are gonna call it a barbecue.
Are we talking about food?
Just at the barbecue, what does your plate look like? Let me ask you that.
It's surrounded by family, man. That to me makes the barbecue. I don't care what we're barbecuing, but I'm kind of weird, so I like, grilled salmon. I don't, I love burgers, but I love grilled salmon. I love
salmon.
Grilled vegetables. Yeah, absolutely, dude.
I've never heard salmon at a 4th of July barbecue.
Absolutely, man. You will find it on my grill on the 4th of July. Smoked salmon, man. And not too well done. I like my salmon virtually raw.
Smoked salmon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
absolutely.
not grilled, you smoke it.
Grill it, but on a smoker. Yeah, you smoke your salmon.
Interesting. Is it kind of like...
You got to try it.
Is it kind of like sushi salmon?
A little bit, but it's smoked. Yeah. But it's got a lot more flavor than even sushi. I love sushi, but I think it's even better than sushi. Yeah, so smoked salmon and, my wife and my kids around me.
Yeah.
That makes the barbecue. And, of course, burgers, medium rare.
Oh, yeah, only right way to do it.
All beef dogs, man. Yeah, just chilling, man, on the porch and swimming in the pool and celebrating and reflecting. Reflection is always good.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about you? What's it look like for you?
4th of July? Typically, for a while we went to Red, White, and Boom in Columbus. I think they did it at the Clippers Stadium for a while. And then that was just kind of briefly for a couple years, but typically we'd go to, like, our entire neighborhood would go, like, growing up, when all the kids were young and around still. We'd go to, like, this golf course not too far away, and they would do fireworks there, and we'd have like snacks and we'd play like kickball, and it was a good time, because growing up our neighborhood was pretty tight, which is something that I feel like you don't really see anymore, unfortunately. Like, we would always do like Christmas parties at our neighbor that lived like on the end of the street, and they would get gifts for the kids, and Santa Claus would be there. And for Halloween we always went as a group, as a neighborhood group, and some of the neighbors would throw up like bouncy houses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it was a good time. It was like I guess typical like early 2000s kind of suburban neighborhood vibe, what as I would describe it. But 4th of July now, I don't know, I've kind of been everywhere the past few years. Like a couple years ago I was in Illinois doing that door-to-door sales that I was mentioning earlier. So we kind of just cooked out at the house with the guys, and I think last year I was up here actually, but I think I just went home with my folks. And then this year I don't know, I think the Freer Park is doing some fireworks, so maybe the missus and I will check that out. But yeah, just typical, probably eat some good food, watch some fireworks. I
think it's important to, a lot of people have different perspective about fireworks, and here's why I like fireworks. Because of the explosion and the bass that the fireworks bring, to me, is a constant reminder of the power behind America. That's what it sounds like, when America rolls in anywhere they go. Americans, when they go anywhere, when we show up as a military in any other territory or region in the world, that's what it sounds like. It's that explosion and boom, that show of force, that we're here to protect people.
Yeah.
And so I think fireworks are important to me for that reason right there, because it's, in 1776 when they celebrated, they had fireworks.
Yeah.
And they celebrated with fireworks, and so we still celebrate with fireworks, and I think it's important to keep that tradition very much alive. I think it's important. A lot of people are like, oh, it's not about fireworks. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Because of all the military veterans that come home, it's that reminder that we did it for a reason. So I think fireworks are important, man.
Yeah. It's kind of off topic, but as as it is the World Cup this year being hosted in North
Yeah, man.
America, I think it's funny, all these videos online, you see, you know, like there's been pretty viral videos with like the Scottish, the Japanese, and like English people coming over to the States. And, you know, they're being interviewed with these people, and they're like, oh yeah, like our media, they shove all this crap down our throat about America, and then they come and they're like, wow, this place is amazing, you know, they got everything is bigger in Texas, and
Yeah.
Texas barbecue and ranch is like the craze for foreigners. I think it's funny that, you know, from the outside they see America as, you know, this thing that it's not, and they come in and, you know, they're all saying like the people are lovely and the food is obviously great. The Buc-ee's are great. The Buc-ee gas stations.
Yeah,
I don't know if
yeah.
you've been there,
Oh
but
yeah.
again, just I kind of guess just reflecting that American pride that a lot of us are proud to be.
Yeah, I think we're a superpower because God has allowed us to be a superpower. And I think that's important, man.
Yeah. That has been it for the Secure the Perimeter podcast over Patriotism is Not Dead. If you guys like this video, make sure to leave a like and comment a suggestion on what we should talk about next. And subscribe for more weekly content. I know we couldn't shoot one last week. Things were pretty busy over here, but look for weekly content every Tuesdays. But Brent, apart from that, do you have anything else?
No, man, I think I'm good, buddy. Appreciate it.
Well, yeah. Again, thank you so much for watching. Leave a like if you've enjoyed, and tune in next week for more. We'll see you later.